Christ. When I was in engineering school, I had two different physics classes that I had to take, and each had exams, tests. The first one, we had this big final exam, and the professor told us that we could use both sides of an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, and we could write anything that we wanted on that sheet of paper to bring into the test as a cheat sheet. Now, as we were in anticipation of the day of the test, some of us dutifully took that one sheet of paper and wrote down what we needed to help us get through that test. But quite a few of our classmates had these graphing calculators, and in those calculators, you could put formulas and other pieces of data that you could use as if it was the sheet of paper. On the day of the final exam, we walked into the classroom, all got settled, many were getting their calculators ready. The professor walked in and said, "Go ahead and put your calculators away. You're not going to need them for the test. We're not going to be doing any calculations or math today." Well, you saw the panic ensue as some of these people had prepared in the wrong way for the exam that we were going to be taking. The second physics class I had, instead of having one big test, we had a smaller test every single week. And each of those had on it 10 multiple choice questions, and then another side with some other questions. The multiple choice questions were taken straight from a study guide. The answers were the same, they were in the same order, and if you knew all the answers to the things on the study guide, then you knew the answers to the quiz on the test. During one of those weeks as we were preparing for that quiz, I went down the hall to visit some neighbors, and they were not studying physics. They were preparing for the test by studying grammar. They were looking at the wording of the questions and finding things like if the word rotational is in the question twice with a comma after the second one, then the answer to the question is A. Or if the question uses the word force 3 times, the answer is B. They spent an enormous amount of time deconstructing the language of these questions so that when they got to the exam about physics, they would be able to answer those questions based on simply the wording and not actually knowing the physics. It would always seem like if they had spent that much time actually studying physics, they would have done just fine on the test. But both of those classes are examples of preparing the wrong way for the test, having been given the directions, and preparing in a way that leaves out what you're supposed to be learning, but might allow you to do okay on the test ultimately. Both are exercises in anticipation, and both are exercises in not really living into that thing in the way that they were supposed to live into it. Today is the first Sunday in Advent. And in this time of Advent, we talk about hope, we talk about expectation, about Jesus coming again at Christmas. We talk about excitement and all of that. But the gospel reading for today doesn't live in that place of anticipation and hopefulness, it doesn't seem like at first. It sounds really foreboding. There's this talk of tribulations and of the sun going dark and the moon ceasing to shine. And then this gathering in, and then this language from Jesus that the Son of Man is going to say, be awake, be alert, because you don't know when this is all going to happen. It has a way of making us perhaps look forward with a sense of doom as opposed to a sense of hope. I'm not sure that's what Jesus intends for us to do, but just like those physics students who prepared in the wrong way for the tests and were anticipating, but maybe not anticipating well, we actually do this in all kinds of ways. I think of a woman that we'll call Kara. She came to my office after her cousin's spouse had died, and she had not heard from her cousin. The husband had been dead, and there was funeral planning going on, but the cousin had not talked to Kara and invited her to the funeral. Kara thought maybe her cousin was mad. She thought maybe there was some strain in the relationship. There was some reason she must have done something wrong, and she was anticipating that this was really true. She had no real evidence of this, but this is where her mind was. She was imagining that the worst possibility was the reality, and then living towards that reality as if it were true. So we had a talk about, okay, maybe it is, right? So what if the worst case is true and that she's mad at you and doesn't want to talk to you and you were to call and find that out? At least you would know. But maybe the worst case isn't true, and maybe you could give her a call and things might turn out okay. And when she called, Kara found out that her cousin was swamped in funeral planning and deep in grief and just had no ability to reach out to anybody, and that the call to her actually was a huge blessing. The thing that Kara was preparing for and anticipating wasn't the real thing, but being present with her cousin turned out to be exactly where she needed to be. The outcome doesn't always turn out well, though, when we have an expectation of something going poorly. There's another guy, we'll call him Tony, who on his way home would stop for a beer in anticipation of the fight with his wife that was to come. He knew it was coming, and so he thought a beer would help, not seeing clearly that the beer was contributing to the problem of the fights and the arguments when he got home. He indeed got home and lived right into that fight that he was expecting. But you have to wonder if his expecting it wasn't part of making it happen. Now, again, that's not the best ending, and it could be that a marriage like that ends up ending. And it could be that some realization and some hard work takes it to a place of new beginnings. Either way, it's that anticipation of what is to come that sometimes we create it as we go. Sometimes there's anticipation that's hopeful, and there's responsibility that goes with it. Preparing for retirement, for example. Not everybody has the wherewithal and capability to do that, but our culture encourages us to do that. My mom did not like her job and was really excited about escaping it into retirement in June of 2013 as she hit her 61st birthday. And as she was working towards that day, she got all of her finances ordered, did all the things you're supposed to do when you're anticipating that thing to come. But that March, she died. All of that work, all of that anticipation, all of that responsibility never got realized. And she lived her day to day in her job in a place of just not being happy about it because she was always looking forward, right, to this space of retirement and escape. That wasn't the only reason she didn't like it, right? But that was the tension that she lived in. And whether it's trying to get to retirement or thinking you're going to get to that next vacation or that next promotion or whatever it is, sometimes we avoid the struggle of today by imagining some blessing for tomorrow. And all of these examples, right, whether it's Kara imagining the worst, whether it's Tony preparing for the worst and maybe making it happen, or the ways that we responsibly and try to get towards the hope for escapes, all of them take us out of today and put us into a space of trying to live tomorrow before it gets here. In the pandemic, this has been really easy, right? I, for one, almost every day say out loud at some point, I can't wait till this is over and we can be back connected and not deal with all these technical problems and distancing and be the human beings that God created us to be in the proximity that really is life-giving for us. Again, right? That's a way of hoping for and anticipating something new that is to come. If we hear this Bible text today from the gospel and think that Jesus' invitation to keep awake and beware is somehow an invitation for us to live tomorrow before we get there, I think we're hearing it wrong. I don't think Jesus wants us to live in those spaces of expecting the worst to happen or bringing the worst about because we're anticipating it or trying to escape today to get to some better tomorrow. I think instead what Jesus is inviting us to do is to be present today, to live today as it comes, and not just live it, but to find God in today. Because for all of the foreboding sort of language in this gospel text, there are a couple of bits of good news. The first is that Jesus is near. As it talks about the Son of Man, it says he is near right at the very gates. It is a statement that says God's presence is all around us all the time, that Jesus is with us and near us all the time. Whether the outcomes are good or the outcomes are bad, Jesus is there. That then is an invitation for us too to be present with one another. Sometimes that presence is being that listening ear for someone who really needs someone to talk to. Sometimes it's literally just sitting and being present with somebody. Sometimes it's being in that moment, say that 30 seconds that the beggar is at your car door at an intersection, truly seeing that person as a human being for just that little bit of time. There are so many ways that we can be present with one another. And my hope for all of you is that you have experienced in some way that presence as God's presence, because Jesus does indeed work through this body of Christ that we are a part of to be present in the world. So that this invitation to keep awake and be alert is not about escaping today and in tomorrow, but about being fully present today and looking for those awesome, unexpected deeds of God all around us. At the same time, we know that sometimes the worst things that we expect actually do happen, that we have bad days and bad experiences and trauma and struggle. And there's good news in this text for that as well. Jesus talks about the Son of Man whose reach extends to the farthest reaches of earth and the farthest reaches of heaven. What it's saying is that you can't get outside of the embrace of Jesus, that Jesus's reach goes everywhere. So even when we have been terrible or done terrible things or just in a terrible space, Jesus is not just near, but we can't get away from Jesus. Jesus will come and find us right where we are. This is what Jesus does on the cross, meets humanity right where we are in all of our brokenness. And on that cross, his arms are reaching out to the furthest extenses of earth and to the furthest extenses of heaven. And with those arms reaching out, Jesus then embraces the whole of humanity and all of creation to carry us into this new space of resurrection life that we celebrate. A life where we are invited then to be present. Not trying to live into tomorrow, right? But to really live today. In preparing for those physics tests, there was all of this misplaced preparation that were in anticipation of that test to come. Today, we could read this Bible text and prepare for the wrong things, right? Or we could live in that grace of Jesus who has gifted us with this life to be present in this day, knowing that, yes, tomorrow will come. It will come with its good things and its bad things, and today may have its struggles. But Jesus is present with us today, and he will be tomorrow as well. Amen.